Hi everyone. Today our first guest critic is Bengi Güldoğan. She's an architect and a PhD candidate from Istanbul Technical University Architecture Design Program. She's also lecturing at MEF University Architecture Department. She holds her Bachelor of Architecture degree and Master's degree from Istanbul Technical University. She participates in domestic and international exhibitions as researcher and artist. And in her work, she digs out architectural and geographic narratives, focusing on memory and displacement. Her latest works were shown in Bahar, Sharjah Biennial Offsite Project in Istanbul, and she presented in postcards from the Anthropocene Conference in University of Edinburgh. Now, let's listen to Bengi. Here.
Thank you, Zeynep, for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me. I will share my screen and presentation. So today, I will present a few of my works. I will talk very briefly about my master's thesis, an ongoing research project I conduct, and then I will present a part of my ongoing PhD thesis. What they have in common is the way I conduct the research. The research for each of them starts with tracing some objects and narratives, and then conceptualized in an architectural context. Women Homes Istanbul is the title of my master thesis, and the research for it starts with tracking the stories of a spoon and a photo. By tracking them, I find out about the stories and movements of women in Istanbul, one and all the Istanbulite, and the other a migrant. Çüngü Şabadum is an ongoing research project funded by the Hrant Dink Foundation. The objects of research are a monastery, a book, a land deed, an embroidery, and a gravestone, all connected to the Armenian genocide in 1915 in a village called Çüngiş in eastern Turkey. The last project I will talk about today is called The Witnesses to a Disappearance. The brick, the plan, and the video is the research I have been conducting as a part of my PhD thesis.
Bengi?
Efendim.
Can we have a full screen of view? Because
of course. Of course.
Thanks.
So I will tell 3 stories that can be discussed through the concepts of displacement, memory, and evidence. The stories told here take various forms like historical accounts, archives, or documents, all of which are physical and metaphorical acts of excavating and unearthing. I try to narrate, document, and speculate on how human and non-human exist through and within the interrelations of social, cultural, and physical transformations of space. So I start with the first story. It's called The Brick. The research started while I was looking for a place to stay in Ava, located at the western coast of the Black Sea. On the website of one of the hotels there, I read a sentence about the architectural feature of the hotel, and it says, "Our hotel is constructed with the bricks of old Greek houses in the surrounding villages." When I arrived to Ava, I went to talk to the owner of the hotel. I asked about the sentence as it meant someone demolished the old Greek houses in the villages around and took the bricks. She said she bought the building in 1984. It was a dull concrete building. She made the necessary extensions and turned the place into a hotel. 5 years later, they covered the building with old bricks. And since then, the hotel turned into a popular place. The issue about where the bricks came from is not entirely true, she confessed. They are not from the surrounding once Greek villages, but they searched a lot and bought the bricks they used for the hotel from a guy based in Balıkesir. I traveled to Balıkesir to talk to him in the village that he owns 2 hotels and most of the houses named Yeşilyurt. The village once belonged to Greek, but mostly abandoned after the population exchange between Turkey and Greece in 1923. 1.6 million people changed places between Greece and Turkey. 400,000 Turks were brought to Turkish lands, and more than 1 million Greeks living in Turkey were sent back to Greece. This exchange started the journey of the brick. The locally grown product of the Aegean region has been olive oil for centuries. Not only olive was grown, but byproducts were also an important part of trade in the region. The population of the region used to be a mixture of Turks and Greeks. Greeks dominated the olive oil business, and lots of olive oil factories were built, mostly around Edremit. While the necessary equipment, big machinery for squeezing the olive, were brought from Italy and Switzerland, the material for the construction of the factory buildings mainly were bricks, which are called fire bricks, as they were cooked in ovens to very high temperatures. They were easy to produce, cheap and durable, creating a certain local architectural style. In 1923, as the population exchange displaced and mobilized lots of people between Turkey and Greece, problems appeared about the abandoned land and settling the newcomers down, both in Turkey and in Greece. One of the problems is that the exchange population had adverse expertises economically. Most of the people who came and settled in villages in Turkey used to live in cities back in Greece, and they knew a few about farming, and they depended on city jobs. Likewise, people doing farming in rural areas in Greece had to live in cities where they had little access to land. The big olive oil factories were abandoned in time, as families that inherited those plots were not interested in the job. The machinery were sold, and the buildings were left to ruin. Coming to 1980s, there were a few of them in good condition and working. This is where our guy from Balıkesir steps in. He is originally from Urfa, a city in the south of Turkey. He is a rich businessman, and he has been settled in Balıkesir in Yeşilyurt village for more than 20 years. Now he owns most of the village, and he says that the village is spectacular as he covered all the buildings with bricks. He does this as a business. He demolishes abandoned olive oil factories and uses their bricks to cover the facade of his houses or sell them. He searches the region for the abandoned factories not working because of the inheritance or economical matters. When he finds one that the owner wishes to demolish for using the plot for another purpose or sell, he sends his man to bargain for demolition. If he wins the auction, the man demolishes the building and carefully take out and then clean the bricks and then bring to him. He says once he had lots of it, but now he has a little stock left, as most of the factories are demolished. He complains that those old factories are not seen as a cultural heritage and preserved, as if he had no role in it. He showed me one of his hotels in the village that has its corridors and rooms covered with old bricks. While leaving the village, passing from a street, he showed me a pile of bricks that were waiting outside to be used as a facade cladding, and told me about the old olive oil factory the bricks came from. So I took one of the bricks, and this is the end of the first story. I go on with the second one. It's called The Plan. The second story begins with the construction of a mega dam that was built in Turkey in 1960s, namely the Keban Dam. It was constructed between 1966 and 1975 on Euphrates River in eastern Anatolia. The Keban Dam continued a period of intense investment in dams and also marked a shift in their scale in terms of the construction material used and power. Keban Dam used to be the biggest of its time. It marked the rise of hydropower in Turkey's annual energy production. Keban Dam is constructed in the scope of the Southeast Anatolian project, known as GAP, which is a development scheme designed to diminish social and economic inequalities in Turkey's southeastern Kurdish provinces. As signs of their time, dams serve as good chronological markers in Turkey's political history. In 1946, the Democratic Party was founded to change the rule of the Republican People's Party. Democratic Party began to include hydroelectricity among its electoral promises. After its victory in 1950, the building of roads, factories, and dams by the Democratic Party were in action. To build the dam, government sought loans from the World Bank, United States, and the European Economic Community. The government also expropriated land for the construction of the dam. The reservoir of the dam covers an area of nearly 700,000 hectares, and it floods around 100 villages, and the other 100 losing a large part of their agricultural land. Most of the families in zones affected by Kevan Dam were landless peasants, so they didn't receive any compensation, or they were peasants with little land who would receive very little money. People had to demolish their houses before the water did in order to carry and reuse the construction material in the new place they will settle. 174 villages were fully drowned, most of which are the settlement of ethnic minorities in Turkey like Kurds, Armenians, or Alevis. Around 30,000 people were forced to move to other villages or cities as a consequence of the dam's construction. The village of Munzuroğlu is one of the 174 drowned villages. The ağa konağı in Munzuroğlu, he used it as a summer house for the family. Before the village was fully submerged, photographers of the state hydraulic works photographed the region that will be submerged. These photos and many more were taken by them. I structured them as a mini narrative, focusing on the village and the house of my grandfather while the water slowly covered the village year by year. So this is the mini narrative, and these are the photos taken by the state hydraulic works. It starts from the air, and then it slowly goes into the daily life of the village. And then we see the house and see my grandfather leaving the village, and the houses are being abandoned, and the water slowly covers the space. And this is what it looks like today. So in the last photo, you can see a peak of the hill that's above water while all the others are submerged. The hill is actually a tumulus, and it's not the only heritage that is now underwater. So not only villages were submerged, but also history was submerged too. Before the construction of the dam, the history in the reservoir area began to worry a few archaeologists in early 60s. In 1966, archaeologists and other scientists came to the region to record and study the past of a landscape soon to be submerged, and started the Keban Dam Rescue Project. In a limited time, members of the rescue project from Middle East Technical University were able to document and examine the archaeological sites and ancient monuments now underwater. Today, Keban Dam Rescue Project marks a turning point in the history of archaeology in Turkey. Project teams collected material evidence from all periods of Eastern Turkey's history and prehistory. One of the rescue project team was based in the village of Munzuroğlu, and my grandfather's house in the village was used as an excavation house, where the archaeologists stayed and stored the excavated findings during the rescue project from 68 to 75 excavation seasons. In parallel to the archaeological excavations, the region's more contemporary folklore, architecture, and cultures were studied too. In the scope, the plan of the house was drawn as a part of the documentation study, as the house drowned completely in 1975. So these are the publications of the rescue project, and this is the plan drawing of my grandfather's house in Munzuroğlu. Here in between, I can tell you about another story that I have been tracking. This story led to another research and another tracking, of course. The excavated findings, the artifacts that were first stored in my grandfather's house were taken to the archaeological museum. It was newly built in Elazığ in 1970 at the end of the rescue project. In August 2016, in a period of Turkish-Kurdish war, a van exploded in front of the police department of Elazığ, which is just across the archaeological museum. The explosion caused heavy damage both in the police department and also in the museum. Some of the artifacts unearthed in the Kebandem rescue project were also damaged. The museum is closed now, and the work and the artifacts await to be taken to the museum that will be built. This is another research project, I guess. So I will go on with the third story. It's called The Video. The third story takes place in the city of Elazığ in eastern Turkey. Elazığ is located in the upper Euphrates Valley at a distance of 45 kilometers to the Keban Dam in the second story. The city initially developed in 1834 as an extension of the historical city of Harput, which was situated on a hill and difficult to access in winter. The ancient town of Harput, which means rocky fortress in Armenian, was built by the first Armenian kings, and it fell under Turkish control in 1085. Harput used to be an important station of American missionaries for many years. American and French colleges were established, and the majority of the town were Armenians until the Armenian genocide in 1915. Most of the people living there were killed, and the town was burned down. In the 19th century, the governor at the time started an expansion to the suburbs located on the plain below Harput. Due to its high elevation and lack of water, Harput was slowly abandoned, and most of its residents moved to Elazığ, the city, on the plain. My grandfather and his family were one of them. He was born in Harput. The family moved from the mountain town to the city in plain Elazığ in 1940s. In the city, he bought a mansion in the center, which was used as the American embassy for a while, and a winery before. It had a unique architecture and was built by Armenian craftsmen. The city center started getting dense at the end of the 70s. In the 80s, during the neoliberal reforms adopted by the government, economic and political conditions changed, and it affected the urbanization of Anatolian cities, resulting in heavy migration to the cities. In order to clean the effects of the migration, the replanning and management of the cities were carried out by the municipalities. That was also the case in Elazığ. In 1985, my grandfather's house was demolished in order to build a hotel in the city center. But the hotel was never built. Instead, the plot has been used as a car park since then. Another reason of the demolition was the Turkish government's obsession to wipe out Armenian heritage from the east of the country, as the house belonged to an architecture tradition of the other. Among my grandfather's archive, I found a videotape that includes the shooting of the house. The video was taken in 1985, just before the house was demolished by the municipality in order to make a hotel. The video starts outside the house, giving a general view, and then the man with the camera gets in the house and slowly goes through the rooms, zooming in the objects, furniture, and accessories in order for the family to be able to watch and remember their house. So this is the video cassette, and these are some screenshots from the video. So this is the end of third story. We come back to the start, and to the objects make sense now. The brick that belonged to an abandoned olive oil factory that once belonged to Greek who had to leave Turkey during the population exchange. The plan drawing of a house that was submerged in an artificial water reservoir, and the video recording of a mansion that was demolished during the urban regeneration of an Anatolian city are conceptualized as witnesses to a disappearance. Sticking to the theme of the shift of journeys, I want to tell about the afterlife of the objects. I mean, after I mobilized them for my PhD thesis. The plan is scanned and the video is transferred to a flash disk. They traveled with me to Mardin, to London, and to Edinburgh for similar presentations I made focusing on different aspects of the research. The brick was first in Sarıyer, in my house, then I moved in with my family. The brick moved to Bostancı along all my stuff. And now it's at a friend's house in Kurtuluş because I couldn't carry it back home to Bostancı after I took it to my faculty in Taksim with me for a presentation to my supervisor. So I want to finish with a quote by John Haydock. I believe in keeping records. I believe the record is to bear witness. I believe in the density of the sparse. I believe in place and the spirit of place.
Bengi, thank you very much for this really amazing work, I think, and for it's very striking and interesting and it's been a very to the point presentation for our work for Off Journeys team, I think. It's very interesting to like trace and discover and decipher the narratives and the history, actually, related history of these found objects. And it's very interesting to see how every object has its historical process, and any object becomes so valuable for us. And I can also see it in your presentation too. We see every object with a plain white background photograph, so it also mic for a little bit. Is it okay now? Okay, I keep hearing my voice. Still.
I also hear you twice.
Can you close your microphone for a second?
Okay.
For a minute, maybe? Now you closed, I think. Okay, it's better. Let's close our microphones when we talk. We do it, but you can, if you do it, it would be nice. So I was saying it's very interesting to like trace, discover, and decipher the past of like their historical processes of these found objects, and it's very striking that they are very personal to you. I think it's I found it very striking and interesting, and also seeing that every object has its own historical process, so any object becomes so valuable. I was also saying that the way you present them to us, putting them plainly on this single white surface and kind of holding them up, just showing the object, is also, I think, what is it? Like coherent, let's say, with the subject. Before any comments from, do you have any comments, or shall I make? Do you have any comments or questions? I'm gonna start then, and I was just gonna ask. So you had 3 objects, or let's not say objects. Maybe the brick is of course an object, but the brick, the plan, and the video. I can definitely see how you come across in your personal journey to this brick and trace it back. But for instance, did you have an extra effort to find the plan or the video? Like, are they in the same, have you found them in the same process, or as the brick, or are they different? Did you have any extra effort to find them, or did you just came across them also?
I didn't just come across them. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. I came across the story about the brick a few years ago, like in 2015, I guess, and the others, the plan and the video. I came across them while I was looking at an archive of my grandfather's. My grandfather is very interested in building. I mean, he's not an architect, but he always worked in the construction of the houses he and his family lived in, and he made an archive of those houses. There are 7 of them, and he collects the construction photos, the plan drawings, even how much material is used and how much is spent for the house. So I came across them in that archive, and actually for my PhD thesis, I don't use the story of the brick, but I use stories of the plan drawing and the video.
Yeah, it's very, I think, very influencing also to see how this your personal encounter become turn into a research project. It's moving to. So, is there any comments or questions? No. Yeah, there are no comments, I think. And as I explained to you, our work is also going on in this kind of the same, that similar, let's say, direction. And some of our students, some of us are working on found objects and how they trigger their memories, what they trigger in their memories, and then wrote them down as stories. Or some actually are working on the scenes and their observations on the scenes, and most of them are related to their memories and the histories, maybe of the not histories, but more like observations. But they're all digging down something they found around themselves. Most of them are really personal. So I think it's really important to hear your research for all of us.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. It just shows how the work here done by our people here, not our students, but young architects here. Your work shows how it can correspond with a research of history and how the personal objects and surroundings can intervene with politics and daily life politics and macro scale politics also. So it is very important to see such a work to understand our work here. So thank you very much about that.
Yeah, there's a question finally.
Is it working? Hey, thank you very much for your time and your presentation. I would ask, in the beginning you said like the research was also about the afterlife of the object. So also I am interested in, it's as well as being a research project. So did you exhibited them, or did you rearrange the objects, or what else have you done as a working on their afterlives? So
For the first two, I mentioned.
yes, the brick and the video and the plan.
Okay. For the break, raw material for my PhD thesis, and I have been like conceptualizing it in a structure, but I haven't been exhibiting for sure, and I have been trying the different arrangement of them. But hopefully I will.
So we will be waiting. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or anything? Okay. Bengi, thank you very much also for attending to our workshop with such a short notice. Actually, like 2 days ago, I talked to Bengi and she said, okay, yes. And this has been a very good contribution to our workshop team also. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. For inviting.
Okay, bye. See you soon.